Different by design. Studebaker is. Studebaker is. Studebaker is.
All right, thank you, Pat, and thank you all for being here today and for not falling asleep during my jazz music when you came in today. So, very excited to talk about the station wagon today. It's such a iconic part of American culture. I mean, let's just do a quick survey here. Who in this room owned a station wagon at one point in their lives? See, almost everybody. I love it. I love it. And so we're gonna go into it here. So the talk is divided into two parts. The first part, we're going to kind of do a, let's say, 30,000 foot view history of the station wagon from its earliest incarnations in the 19th century and kind of bring us all the way forward to where we are now. And then we're going to look a little bit in the second part at Studebaker specifically, right? Where the Studebaker National Museum will look at station wagons produced by Studebaker. So let's go ahead and get going here. All right, well, I would be a fool not to share my own memories with a station wagon. And so this is the house I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago, a little town called Bartlett. And so this is a 1986 Chevy Celebrity. And I asked my mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm talking about station wagons here in this June program. I'm like, can you please look through our photo albums? I know we had the station wagon. And she dug up a couple of great photos for us. And so they bought this car new in 1986, right before my second birthday. The sticker price was $10,834. It is a four-door, three rows of seats, four-cylinder, 2.5-liter engine, 17 city miles and 22 to 35 highway miles. So I have a lot of memories traveling in this car, falling asleep in the back, driving on vacations all over the place. And so obviously we sold that a long, long time ago. All right, and there's another photo of me playing on the driveway and another sort of faux wood-paneled version of the Chevy Celebrity there on the left. So that's me in the yellow sweatshirt there, and that's a very fun picture. All right, so part one, we'll talk about, again, the station wagon really is an American icon, right? Judging by all the hands that went up just a moment ago, many of us have owned one, have memories with one, but an interesting part is just how deeply it's ingrained in in American culture. And so I'm going to read this quote from the great iconic vacation movie here. Of course, many of you have probably seen this movie. We have Eugene Levy as a car salesman in the film as he's trying to sell this car to Chevy Chase's character. Now, I owe it to myself to tell you that if you're taking the whole tribe cross-country, the Wagon Queen family truckster, you think you hate it now, wait till you drive it. So it's a great film if you haven't seen it. So the actual station wagon in the film was a 1979 Ford LTD Country Squire, right? Obviously, like I said, heavily modified by Warner Brothers and designed by George Barris, which I didn't realize. So great film. But we see station wagons all over the place, right? So I got a couple of examples here. We have Fez from that 70s show, right, sitting on that 1969 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, which I recently learned he actually owns today. This was obviously several years ago now. And then a screenshot from The Simpsons, right, of Homer always getting run over in the driveway by their station wagon. So, and I just love this photo here, another Ford Country Squire. Again, this is the kind of advertisements you would see, right? It was both a stylish, quote unquote, but practical family vehicle. We have two children. My favorite part of this ad is the two children playing, it looks like chess in the backseat of this station wagon, which that's more power to them. That's fantastic. So, all right, but we have to go back in time here to learn about the actual term station wagon. When we stop and think about it, it is kind of a strange term, right? But again, if we go back to its roots in the 19th century, that term station wagon really comes from its use as a vehicle to deliver and pick up people and their luggage from train stations, right? So we have these early horse-drawn vehicles here. You can see in this photo on the left, pulled up kind of on this boardwalk outside of presumably a train station. We have another early Studebaker advertisement advertising a station wagon. And these were just vehicles to, again, carry people, carry their luggage and belongings. You also see the term depot hack, right? That was another term applied to these types of vehicles. That term hackney comes from hackney carriage, which was a type of taxi cab, right? All right, so we get into the 1910s, 1920s here. We have this transition from that horse-drawn era into the motor vehicle era. So we have other early examples here, like this Ford Model T station wagon on the left, and then this 1923 Star station wagon here on the right. This vehicle from the collections of the Henry Ford is on display upstairs as part of the Family Haulers exhibition. It's a wonderful example. And so you'll see, I mean, you can see that transition from the horse-drawn era. We still have these sort of custom-made wooden bodies, right? And mounted on these other sort of chassis, right? So we have this this wooden body. So the Star was the first company to really manufacture station wagons on their assembly line complete with this body. It has these roll-down canvas windows, it has the wood paneling on the sides, it has the bench seats. So again, this is an early example of that type of station wagon. So, and like I said, we have independent manufacturers, custom coach builders really building these wooden bodies for station wagons at this point. All right. So we get into the 1920s, 1930s. Again, a couple of other examples here. We have a 1934 Buick Series 50 station wagon on the left and this 1932 Ford Model B station wagon on the right. You'll see a lot of images here from the digital collections of the Henry Ford. Again, these are still very much custom vehicles at this point, okay? And so these are very well equipped, often used, again, at resorts, hotels, ranches, to ferry people, again, and their luggage. They have great towing capacity. I mean, they have a lot of space. I mean, that's really what they were designed for. Now, one downside for these wood-bodied vehicles, they're very expensive, like I said, to build and to maintain. You had to constantly repair them, right? You had to refinish the wood to avoid rotting or discoloration. So this was an investment you made. Again, they were typically at the top of their model lineup because they were so custom built. It's 1941 Chrysler Town & Country on the left. You get into the 1940s. I should have mentioned earlier that, let's go back one really quick. Around this time, so we're looking 1940, 1941. So let's say a Ford Super Deluxe station wagon was about $1,000 base price when a comparable 41 Ford was about $730, right? So you can see the price difference there. All right, again, so getting into the 40s here, you can see, go back forward here, you can see that how Ford were making these wooden bodies on their assembly line here. It was quite the process. So again, they use different woods for the actual wooden bodies that, again, did require maintenance. The wood varied. It was usually maple or birch. You would have mahogany or other woods like sweet gum for the inserts and paneling. So, all right. So now we get into, there we go, get into the late 1940s, 1950s. So post-war here, right? So it was really, I include both these vehicles on here for a good reason. This was that transition from these wood-bodied station wagon into all steel, right? And so it was really the 46 Willys Jeep was the first all-steel station wagon body, and that's what really kind of transformed the industry, right? Transformed it from these expensive sort of custom vehicles to more of a mass market, mass-produced type of a family vehicle. So you can see that reflected in the marketing of the era as well. And so 1946, Willys has the first mass-produced steel station wagon body, again, from that boutique vehicle to more of an affordable mass-market product. So you can see this advertisement from 1951 here of a Willys station wagon. The family looks like they're having a grand old time. You'll see other vehicles of that time. Willys actually painted the metal panels on the side to look like wood. I guess that was the start of the faux wood era. And so then we also have the Plymouth Suburban. So you'll see this term Suburban pop up quite a bit. They were advertising, again, the new all-metal Plymouth Suburban, the car with 101 uses. And so, so prior to 1949, Plymouth did offer a four-door Woody wagon, but these were very expensive to build and buy. And so the Suburban became a very popular station wagon. It had a back row of seats that you could fold down. So a lot of cargo space. So you can see that, we can see the transition into the more station wagon we all kind of know and love, which we'll get to here in a moment. So, All right, so we get into the 50s. Oops, did I skip ahead a little bit? Here we go. Into the 50s. So I would say the 1950s into the 1960s were probably the golden age in a lot of ways of the American station wagon. And, I mean, the 70s too, I suppose. But we have a lot of, I mean, by 1950, almost all major American automakers had station wagons in their lineup, with the exception, again, 1950, of Studebaker, Hudson, Kaiser, Fraser, Cadillac, Lincoln, and Imperial, right? And we're going to come back to Studebaker in just a second. And that would change, again, by the mid-1950s. So it's not a mistake, right? And by the 1950s, we have families, right? I mean, this is post-war, building homes, buying homes, the expansion of the suburbs, right? So we have families growing, and so we have these vehicles really built to suit the new sort of American family in the 1950s. And so we have a few examples here of different vehicles from this era. We have a 55 Ford Country sedan. This was part of our station wagon class at the Concours last year. Again, we have this vehicle here on the bottom on display as part of the exhibit on the turntable right now. It's a 57 Chevy Nomad, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And again, another advertisement for Ford's wagons up there. But we think about especially the mid to late 1950s into 1960. This is that era of fins, of chrome, of just space age styling. I mean, these are a lot of the station wagon names we've probably heard before: the Pontiac Safari, Mercury Monterey, Buick Riviera. I mean, these are all station wagons that are a part of these automakers lineup, right? So. In any size you want. So, this next slide I thought was interesting because it kind of tells you a lot about the station wagon in its role in American culture by the mid to late 1950s. So this is a booklet produced by the Ford Motor Company in 1957, again from the collections at the Henry Ford. 1957, it's called Station Wagon Living, and I'll just read it out loud. Station Wagon Living contains 256 pages, more than 100 in color. It describes and pictures some 140 items of gear, such as tents, boats, lights, stoves, wagon sleeping arrangements, and folding furniture, as well as a directory of the nation's campgrounds and other tips on what's new in excursion gear. And that's just from the front page here. So again, it really shows you how they're placing this vehicle as the perfect way to, for families to enjoy vacations, trips. Again, this is the expansion of the U.S. Highway system, interstate system. So all these things came together to really make station wagons kind of the vehicle for families. Oops. Don't want to skip ahead too far here. All right, let me go back. So again, into the 1960s here, just a couple of examples. We see a greater variation in body styles coming into the 1960s too. Some models with or without the B-pillar. Those are hardtops, and either 2- or 4-door variants. So you see two-door station wagons like the Chevy Nomad I mentioned, but we see a lot of other automakers offering 4-door models as well. And so we have a couple of advertisements here. On the top left is a 1961 Chevy advertisement, right? Talk about their whole lineup. So we have some of their station wagon offerings. Again, Ford, a couple here on the bottom. This is the lower priced Lakewood Chevy station wagon here. And you see the production numbers sort of going up too here. In 1964 alone, Ford built over 140,000 station wagons. So it's a big segment of the total sort of market at that point. So, all right. Again, talking about the 1960s, this image on the left, that's a 1961 Chrysler New Yorker Town and Country. That was also at our Concours last year. And then this Ford station wagon ad on the right. And I included this one because I think it's worth talking about. An iconic sort of element of all station wagons is sort of that tailgate, right? And so we don't have time today, but I encourage you to go online, look at some different models. It's amazing to me the number of ways they these tailgates operated, right? So some just opened, like a door hinged outward. Some folded into the bottom of the wagon, of the bottom of the vehicle, and the windows could fold in or up. It's really kind of fascinating. And we also have, you have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 rows of seats. If it's 4 rows, you'll see like in this Ford station wagon here, they usually were kind of facing each other in the back. 3rd row sometimes could fold down. I think that was the case of this Town and Country here on the left. So, and you'll see again that early 60s styling, right, with the fins kind of jutting out the side, and it's a beautiful vehicle. So, all right, so a few examples from the 70s here. This is a really pretty interesting advertisement on the right here. It's this cropped version of it. But these are some of the wagons you could have bought from Chevy in 1976, starting from the economy-sized Vega at the top there, through the mid-size Chevelle and what Chevy called regular size, which really is full size there in the middle, the Chevy Caprice and the Impala. I drove a 93 Chevy Caprice, but never drove the station wagons, but handled like a boat. So. But yeah, I mean, these are good examples of what you could have bought in the 1970s. I looked this up. So again, regular size Chevy station wagon in 1976 had about 106 square feet of cargo space, and that sounded like a lot. So I looked at what you could purchase today. A 2024 Subaru Outback is very proud of their 75.6 square feet of cubic feet cargo space, so you can see the difference and just how big some of these cars are or were. And so, again, this is the era of the family station wagon, like we talked about in that 70s show. You see them all over pop culture. Here's another advertisement on the top left there. We have another, I think that's a Ford Country Squire, 1979. But this is also, again, these are big gas-guzzling vehicles, right? I mean, there's no way around that. And so by the late 70s, early 80s, this is, again, the gas crisis and the introduction of some other models around this time that really kind of was the writing on the wall, right? We see the era of the big sort of family hauler come to an end around the time of the late 1970s, early 1980s. All right, so really quickly here. So the 1980s and beyond, we could talk, this could be a whole talk by itself, right? But really it was the introduction of, again, some of these fuel standards put in place that came out of the fuel crisis in states like California and other places. But it was the introduction of the minivan. We look at it now and laugh because the minivan, you love it or hate it, most people hate it, was very popular when it came out, right? And so we have this ad on the left there, right? The Plymouth Voyager was marketed as the new Chrysler minivan in 1984, even though they had been making full-size Voyager vans since 1974. The Dodge Caravan also came out in 1984. And then we really have the first true SUVs and crossovers come out in the 1980s. I don't have a picture of it here. We do have an AMC Eagle wagon upstairs, four-wheel drive Eagle wagon, an early example of kind of a crossover vehicle, right? We also have the Jeep Wagoneer. So obviously Jeep had always kind of been in this 4x4 sort of rugged off-road vehicle market, but the Wagoneer was really marketed as, again, a family vehicle, an early sport utility vehicle. So this ad is from 1985. Again, you can still, I love that both these ads still have the faux wood paneling on the side, so it never really went away. We also have this, I think part of a press release for the new Ford Taurus wagon from 1986. Again, even by this point, you see less station wagons kind of in the marketplace. The Ford Taurus wagon actually sold really well. I feel like you still see these once in a while out there. And so it wasn't quite the death of the station wagon as we knew it quite yet, but you can see the end kind of coming soon. And so we'll come back to all this in just a moment. The last two full-size station wagons, American station wagons, before sort of this quasi-resurgence here, were 1996, and it was the Chevy Caprice and the Buick Roadmaster. So you really didn't see anything in the market in the late 90s into the 2000s because SUVs sort of dominated that part of the market. So, all right, so I just have a couple of images here of what's available now. I think this style has come back a little bit. I think people see the appeal of station wagons still. You have the Subaru Outback. You see Subarus all over the place. I mean, Audi has a couple of different station wagon models, Volvo, Porsche. I mean, there's other vehicles out there depending on how much you want to spend. I mean, hatchbacks are also very popular now too, but there are still station wagons. They've just evolved quite a bit from how we remember them. So, and I had to include this one that that Patrick sent me, found on Facebook. This person decided to, well, you know what that is. That's the Tesla Cybertruck that someone's having a bit of fun with there. So anyway. All right. So part two, we're going to talk a little bit about Studebaker station wagons. Does anybody know what this is in the slide here? Any ideas?
1956.
It is a 56. It's not a Conestoga. I think this is a Pinehurst station wagon, and it has the optional sort of roof rack there, but you can see it says President. That was the Pinehurst was the label they gave to their station wagon on the President line there. So we'll go ahead. Well, we're going to go all the way back again to the 19th century here. So Studebaker was using this term station wagon, I found it as early, or depot wagon, as early as 1892. And I want to give a quick shout out. There's an article in the Studebaker Drivers Club magazine, Turning Wheels, from 1997. The author, Fred Fox, fantastic, or I think a two-part article, June and July of 97, maybe even three-part, on the history of Studebaker station wagon. So if you're curious, that's a great resource. Yeah, you can see, again, 1892, we have an example of a depot wagon. Again, 1912, a Studebaker suburban wagon, little sort of two-row wagon there. And this bigger ad here, if you look down here, it says the Studebaker station wagon for the many necessary short trips, particularly in the, I can't even see what that says. In the season of early spring, the station wagon typifies convenience, light and comfortable in a wide range of styles and finishes, etc. So this had always been, that term had always been used for a particular type of station wagon. And we do have a station wagon from around the turn of the century upstairs in the exhibit in family haulers. All right, so a few different examples into the automotive era of Studebaker station wagons, or at least that term they used. So even as early as, again, 1906, this is an era in the early 1900s when Studebaker was, again, building vehicles at their Detroit plants. They were still building horse-drawn vehicles here in South Bend. So that is an early Studebaker electric that they did use the term station wagon for. We also see different vehicles. The Studebaker combination passenger and express car here in the middle there from 1916 has those 2 rows of bench seats, which cannot be comfortable if you're knee to knee with your friends there. But 1917 Studebaker station wagon. Again, these were really produced as commercial vehicles, right? For, again, picking up passengers, moving things around. This is 1926 here on the bottom left, Studebaker model ER Standard 6. So this is a metal sheathed estate car body. You'll see that term estate car used quite a bit in images of the time, advertisements of the time. Again, these are custom wooden bodies using Studebaker chassis. So, and there were several different companies making these custom bodies. US Body and Forging Company. You'll see the name Cantrell. There were several different companies building the coachwork for these station wagons. And then we have a Model 56 Studebaker 6 station wagon from 1933. So, all right. We get into the 1930s here. This is a really, I think, kind of a neat illustration on the left there. We think, at least Fred Fox in his article, thinks this might be the only full-color illustration of a pre-war Studebaker station wagon. We can read about, the color, the paint offerings and all those things, but we just didn't have very many existing images for illustrations from that time. So this is a 1937 Studebaker Commander Suburban. And again, there was a limited number of these built, 1937 and 1939. This color illustration was from a 1937 catalog for the Coupe Express, right? So we have a Coupe Express upstairs now. I don't think that there are any of these vehicles still around that I've ever seen or anyone's ever found. So we have a 1938 Suburban here on the top, and then on the bottom, I thought this was really interesting. This is a an export-only station wagon built on a 2R5 Studebaker truck chassis. So built by Cantrell, the coachwork, again, 1949. So that was for the export market only. All right, and this is a lot, but really helpful to look at all the total number, well, not total number, but total types of station wagons built by Studebaker all the way up until 1954. And so I had no idea before doing this research they had as many station wagons offered as they did. And you can see the body there. Sometimes Studebaker did build those bodies in-house, but more often than not, they were outsourced to other companies. So, yeah, so pretty interesting. And again, they typically were quite expensive. We're talking in, again, 19-teens, $1920, $1,680 is quite a lot of money. So these are very expensive vehicles. Oops. All right, so we're getting to, again, back into an era a lot of you may be more familiar with. You've probably seen some of these either here or elsewhere. So Studebaker really entered that post-war, actually, did I skip one? I think I skipped one. Hold on a second. I missed our friend the Woody. There we go. Come on, behave. Going too fast for it, I think. Yep, hang on. You guys saw it. There we go. Okay. So many people love this car. I love this car. I included it because I think it's one of the just beautiful examples of a post-war Woody station wagon. Produced by a Studebaker, one of one, right? So if you know this story, so this car is upstairs right now in the exhibit. So Studebaker did plan on including a wood-bodied station wagon as part of its model lineup in 1947. I think what ultimately happened, it was too expensive, right, to produce in scale, and so they ended up dropping the Woody wagon from the lineup, and they tested the prototype right out of the proving ground, discarded the vehicle when they were done, and so this is what it looked like on the bottom left there. When they dug it out of the infield at the proving ground, at the test track, and over, some of you may know this, over 30 some years, this car was restored, kind of in fits and starts. And so we had to use some photographic evidence, some other sort of archival materials to try to piece together what this car looked like. We only had a few photos of the car in 1947, and so this is what the car looks like today. So beautiful, beautiful example. It's upstairs right now. So, all right, let's go back forward here. All right, so the Conestoga, obviously named, again, this is 1954. Studebaker had just turned 100 there in 1952, so I think they were kind of trying to evoke some of their storied history here in 1954. So they named the station wagon the Conestoga. And so this was included as part of their model lineup in 1954. Again, the whole station wagon market was growing increasingly kind of full and competitive, and so they would have been fools not to, again, bring out a new station wagon at this time. So they did fairly well. They sold almost 12,000 of these vehicles, 1954. The original base price was about $2,095. Sales were somewhat similar in 1955. You could get this as either a Champion or Commander. And so, yeah, they were very popular, I think somewhat stylish. You can see that front end treatment, very similar to Studebaker's other 1954 offerings. All right, 1955, so just some slight changes to the car, but it's generally the same here. So we have some sales literature from 1955 here. So again, I think a very, very handsome car. I'm going to jump ahead here to 1956. One of the things that I think hampered the Conestoga, and Studebaker was starting to see this in the mid-1950s, was they only had these two-door models, right? Four-door models were becoming more and more popular, and they're a little more family-friendly. And so you'll start to see more four-door models kind of enter enter into the scene here. So we have some styling changes here in 1956. And we'll see names like Pelham, Parkview, Pinehurst station wagons. These lined up with the Champion, Commander, and President's lines, right? And we'll look at another advertisement of those in a second. And despite these kind of unique model names, the wagons still carried fender badges with these more traditional sounding Studebaker names like President, right? So again, the front end styling was very similar to other sedans in 1956. The Pelham would run you about $2,200, while the top of the line Pinehurst was about $2,500 at the time. So wagons had the same options as sedans, like power steering, power brakes, Flight-O-Matic automatic transmission by Borg-Warner. There were also some other unique options you could only get in station wagons. So I mentioned the rooftop luggage carrier, and there was even an air mattress suitable for the back with the seats folded down that you could, again, get as an option, which I thought was kind of fun. So, all right, so that's 1956. Here's 1957 sales literature. So again, we see the similar model names here, but a little bit different. So we have the Broadmoor, the Parkview, I think that is of the Provincial there on the left. So similar to 1956, they're just some different options, and we also have the four-door models as well, which was a nice change to the lineup. And that's the cover of the sales catalog there in 1957. So you can either carry people or plants, but not both apparently, so that's fine. And so again, this is the era in the 1950s of the Studebaker Packard Corporation. So we also have a whole exhibit on that story right now too, the 70th anniversary since that Studebaker Packard merger. So this is an interesting time in the company's history where we do see, you know, again, it's kind of chaotic. There's a lot going on, right, as they're trying to kind of merge these two companies, try to figure out the most cost-effective way for them to bring out new products, but also, you know, make changes to compete with the big three, right? So this car down here, at first glance, looks very similar to its other offerings. That's that's by design. So this is a 57 Packard Clipper station wagon. These are very rare. I should say that they only actually made 869 in 1957. So I don't know how many are still out there, but if you find a 1957 Packard Clipper station wagon, let me know. All right, so we also see some other interesting creations here, 1957. Many of you have seen the Studebaker Scotsman we have upstairs. A really great example of a Scotsman, but they also did build a Studebaker Scotsman station wagon. So if you're unfamiliar, the Scotsman was sort of the bare bones, right? Vehicles you could buy in 1957 from Studebaker. You didn't get a dome light or passenger side sun visor, outside mirrors. The wagon had a floor in the back, but in the regular Scotsman, you didn't even get a floor in the trunk. So options were few beyond that. There was a two-door and a four-door model, but if you wanted that four-door model, you had to upgrade to the Champion Deluxe or Commander wagon. So if you just wanted a bare-bones family hauler, there you have it. So, all right, another unique sort of vehicle here, again, from the Studebaker Packard Corporation. This is the Packard 1958 Packard station wagon. If you're familiar with the 1958 Packard Hawk, it's got a very similar front end treatment here. So if you were to look at these two side by side, yeah, they're very, very similar. And so this, again, not many of these were made. This is sort of the final year for Packard, period. And so these 58 Packard station wagons are somewhat rare. I think only 159 station wagons were built. So, as we move into this late 50s, early 60s here, many of you are probably familiar with this guy here. So this, a great example of a 1959 Studebaker Lark station wagon. This was at our concours last year in the station wagon class. Just the Lark represented kind of this new era for Studebaker, right? Starting in 1959. In 59, there was no four-door model. This is just a two-door model. But then in 1960, they actually did introduce a four-door wagon. But yeah, they built quite a few of these. Larks obviously represented most of the company's production after this point. So as we get into the 1960s, so we'll look at some sales literature here. So there's some 1960 Lark four-door station wagon literature here. I love this ad here because it's just a relaxing day hunting with your dog in the back of your wagon. Some of the period sales or advertisements are just fantastic. But yeah, I mean, you can see it's really, for its compact size, I think Studebaker was extolling its roominess and some of these features that people came to expect in station wagons. But yeah. All right, so did I skip one? I don't think so. Okay. We get into again, 1963. This is the introduction. This is from the New York Auto Show in 1963. I think it's a great photo here. We have a few photos from this from the New York Auto Show. It's the introduction of the Studebaker Wagonaire, right? And so we don't have a Wagonaire on display in the exhibit, but we do have the prototype, really for what the Wagonaire would become. Brooks Stevens designed the Skyview station wagon. That's upstairs right now, and I think its most iconic distinguishing feature is that retractable roof, right? And so Studebaker used that feature a lot in their advertisements at the New York Auto Show. Here you can see, if you're, I guess, going whitewater rafting, you could store your raft standing upwards, but you'll also see refrigerators being transported standing up, fishing, fishing rod and reel, whatever. There's another great ad I saw where a family, I think it was a Wagonaire, are going on a camping trip complete with an outboard motor just sitting on the ground. Whatever it took, you could pack it into this car. So, all right. So again, some other images from 1963. Ads of the Wagonaire. I talked to a woman who's pretty sure when we opened the Family Haulers exhibit that she is one of these little girls in this picture here, which was kind of fun. But again, they marketed and advertised the Wagonaire quite a bit. We have an image here in this wooded area. Again, take your car, take your wagon out camping there. So. Now the Wagonaire could seat up to 8 when equipped with a rear-facing third-row seat, and that was an option through 1965. And again, it included that little drop-down tailgate and attached step. And over the 4-year production run, about 12,000 Wagonaires were sold. And I mentioned we don't have one on exhibit, but we do have kind of the prototype. My sign fell. Prototype for the wagon up in the exhibit right now. So. All right, here's another shot. So we have a Lark and a Gran Turismo Hawk and the Wagonaire there. It's got the rear-facing seat. So. Now we didn't talk a whole lot about, again, I mentioned tailgates and how each make model was a little bit different. Some were really, really interesting. I encourage you all to go online and look some of these up. There was even some, maybe you've seen these in the 70s, some powered, 60s and 70s powered tailgates that could be retracted again into the station wagon body, or could be opened conventionally like a door. So it's pretty amazing what different automakers came up with for these tailgates on the station wagons. All right, another image here. This guy's transporting a tree. I just did this in the Volkswagen Jetta, so it looks like a lot easier in a Wagonaire. All right, a couple more slides here. So we get into, this is toward the end here of Studebaker. So we have 1963, 1964, we have these Daytona versions of the Wagonaire. Could be equipped with a V8, 4-barrel carburetor, a column-mounted shifter manual transmission with overdrive, bucket seats, along with the center-mounted automatic transmission selector were also available. And then the Wagonaire could be ordered with any of Studebaker's R-Series high-performance Avanti V8 engines with a 4-speed transmission as well, manual transmission. So a little bit more powerful vehicle here. Apparently you could even pull a boat, so there you go. But that's it. 1964. Again, we're approaching kind of the end of the line here. At that point, they closed the South Bend factory end of '63, and so we don't see a lot of station wagons coming out after that point. I love this little ad here because it kind of brings home the fact that, again, it kind of shows your age, right? Like, I'm right in the back of a station wagon years old. And so I'm an older millennial. I remember this. I don't know if a lot of people really still do this, but it's, again, a very iconic part of American culture. I don't think the station wagon will ever really go away. I think as, again, this iconic American vehicle will kind of be reinvented to suit whatever the needs are of the 21st century. So pretty interesting. And if you haven't done it yet, I encourage you all after the talk to go upstairs and see family haulers. We have, I think, 8 vehicles on display plus that Chevy Nomad on our turntable. So it's a really wonderful exhibit. So that's all I have. So thank you all very much for coming in today.
Different by design. Studebaker is. Studebaker is. Studebaker.